Okay, it is 1 p.m., so we will go ahead and get started. I want to call to order this meeting of the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board for Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. This meeting is being conducted via Zoom and is also live on YouTube. This will hopefully be our second to last meeting that we Zoom. We are hoping to have our July meeting in person. We'll be announcing that officially as we get closer. The June meeting will be still on Zoom. I'll begin this meeting with a roll call of members. The chair is present. Vice Chair Reeves.
Present.
Member Eng.
Present.
Member Allen.
Present.
Member Kent Monning.
Present.
Let the minutes show that all members are present. We'll now move item number 2, approval of the minutes of our last meeting, the meeting from April 21, 2021. Is there a motion to adopt those minutes?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Been moved by Member Eng. We'll take a roll call vote, starting with the chair votes aye. Vice Chair Reeves?
Aye.
Member Eng?
Aye.
Member Allen?
Aye.
Member Kenmon?
Aye.
Please show the minutes of the April 21st meeting being adopted unanimously. Now moving to the chair's report. As always, just want to inform the public that the board has been working very diligently during the last month. This board meeting is a small glimpse of the work the board does. Nearly 500 cases have been resolved by the board. Unemployment appeal cases at the second level have been resolved by the board in the last month. And just as an aside, thousands and thousands of cases are resolved every month by our judges at the field level, the first level of appeal. So we are working diligently and accomplishing quite a bit. So thank you to all board members and also to the field judges and field staff. A couple of items. I attended yesterday a meeting of our leadership senior staff here in Sacramento. And I'm just so pleased to report they're working extremely smoothly. A couple of new members to the staff, a relatively new still CEO in Mike Kutry, and the meetings run as if they've been doing this for years and years. We do have some approaching problems in terms of just quantity of cases that will be coming to us soon from EDD. In fact, they've already impacted our field level. They haven't come to the board level quite yet, but part of yesterday's meeting was a brainstorming session on how best to deal with this onslaught of cases, and it is historic onslaught of new cases. And I just want to tell the board that the brainstorming, the comments, the interaction between senior leadership staff was very impressive, and I'm sure will result in some very good strategies for dealing with our very much increased caseload. Also attended virtually a meeting of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency the end of last week, where they were talking about largely the governor's May revise, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the results of the revise. It's looking very good for the state, and I just want to say it's also looking good for the workforce agency. We are getting more than our fair share from the state, and I think it's in recognition of the havoc that the COVID pandemic has played with the workforce in California, with unemployment and other retraining needs. So it's a good report on the May revise. Lastly, with regard to individual members' vacation requests, I've gotten requests from several of you for different vacation days, and I think this is normal. It's not more requests, but more requests at once. As COVID is lifting, we're seeing people just wanting to get out of their house finally and do the travel they haven't been able to do for the last 15 or 16 months. But we do want to make sure that we have a group of board members always available to hear cases when they come to us. So what I'm going to ask you all to do is, when you have dates in mind where you would like to have vacation time, please send me a copy of vacation dates you would like to take, and forward a copy also to Mara Luz. Copy her on what you send to me. She will keep a spreadsheet of all of the requests. And of course, requests will be routinely granted unless there are a day or dates where there are multiple board members requesting the same day. We don't want to slow down our production of cases for any reason. So So there is a chance that there may be some dates where we want to work people around. But the sooner you can get your requests to me and to Mary Lou's, the better. And she will then send them on to our attendance clerk, Amanda, once they've been approved. So that will all be taken care of. If you have any questions about that, you may ask them now. Any board members have any questions or concerns? Seeing none?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, I think I was unusually early. I think I put mine in 2 months ago or 3 months ago for October. So I just want to make sure you've got a copy of that.
Yeah, I've got them. I'm not sure if you sent them to Mary Lou's or not, but if anyone sent me dates and not Mary Lou's, please send them to Mary Lou's as well.
I'm pretty sure I sent them to both of you. So,
Okay, then you're good. And yeah, we've gotten from several people, and unless you hear differently, things are looking good. Okay, that's the housekeeping. Now we'll move to board members' reports, starting with our vice chair, Dan Reeves. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that report. Obviously, like all the members, I have significant concerns around the impending tidal wave of cases coming towards both the field offices and us. But I'm going to refrain from making any sort of comments. I'm going to wait to hear from Mr. Kutry and from Jody, and look forward to their reports. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Let's move now to Member Eng.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I believe that there was going to be an introduction to the new PJ. Mr. Reeves, had you been advised to introduce our new Pasadena PJ, or should I go ahead with it? Or
Please go ahead, Mr. Eng.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair. I wanted to warmly welcome Pasadena Presiding Judge Jenny Whalen. I had the opportunity to meet Judge Whalen a few weeks ago at the CUIAB's Pasadena office, along with Mr. Kutry, our chief, and that office is the closest to my residence. So every time there's an IT break or an issue, I have been welcome to use the services of the Pasadena office. I commended Judge Whalen for her unique background coming from the alternate public defender's office and also the public defender's offices respectively. Having been familiar with the person that headed the LA County alternate public defender's office, which is the last position that PJ Whalen came to before CUIAB about 12 or 13 years ago. It's the largest of its kind in the nation. And I know that the person that she reported to ran a very well-organized and tight ship. And so I know that Judge Whalen was one of those that workhorses of that particular office. And being in the public defender's office, I think, makes her uniquely qualified to be a Pasadena PJ because of the breadth and scope of the cases that she faced in her previous iterations with the alternate public defender's office and the public defender's offices. And our amazing CUIAB newsletter stalwarts, Michael Allen and Laura Kent-Monning, will further report on Judge Whalen and other PJs for the exciting, soon-to-come, unprecedented, and long-awaited, anticipated CUIAB newsletter. So welcome. I'm not sure if PJ Whalen is in on the Zoom today, but welcome to the CUIAB board. No further comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mike, and welcome PJ Whalen to CUIAB. We now move to Michael Allen.
Well, I don't know how to follow that up other than we are on schedule for our newsletter. We're doing outreach to all our new folks who are coming on board. We have another newsletter committee meeting next week. I would remind everybody who has graciously agreed to provide their articles that the deadline is last day of May, first day of June, right around there. And that and the only other comment I would make unrelated to the newsletter is that, you know, every meeting I very closely read our minutes because our minutes are our historical record. And, you know, I've served on a lot of boards and a lot of commissions. And I just want to say, I think our minutes are unusually well done. because either they fall into the category of action minutes where it's very sparse, or people go on and on with what everybody said. And these minutes, who's ever doing our minutes, I commend them because they're very well done. And thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael. I think Mark Wusam plays an important role in that, working with staff. So thank you, Mark. And I know Meryl Luz takes part. So yeah, I agree with your comments. Now moving to member Ken Monning.
Thank you, Chair Block. I just wanted to reiterate the excitement of the upcoming newsletter that we are soliciting, as Member Allen said, and then also just to recognize the team members of the newsletter team, because Alan and I get to talk about it a little bit in the board meetings, but the true talent is really with Mariluz Warden, Emilia Gomez, and then Greg Cartal has joined us as well. So they've just worked tremendously hard on the newsletter, and they are the backbone of the team, and they're doing wonderfully. So very excited about that coming out probably, I don't know, a month-ish. So keep your eyes out for that. And also, just as usual, wanted to thank again everybody throughout the state who's working tremendously hard. The numbers are really difficult to see, and they're going up and up with the caseload. And from what I hear, people are stepping up to the challenge and processing more cases continually, and that is just incredible. So really proud of our agency in these tough times to hear that that's how we are responding, and just wanted to send out my thanks to everyone, especially those who continue to go into the offices. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Laura. So that concludes the board members' reports. At this point, I'd like to ask the administrator if we have anyone in the queue for public comment.
Chair Block, we do have one hand raised for public comment. I will allow that person to speak and ask that they introduce themselves to the board and begin their comment.
Okay, before they begin, just want to briefly review the ground rules. A member of the public has up to 5 minutes to make a comment. It will be timed, and please try to stay within that limit. If you reach 5 minutes, we will then ask you to stop. Remember that this is public comment, not a dialogue, not a question and answer period. So you can make your comment, and the board is looking forward to hearing whatever it is you have to say. And we take these comments very seriously. We do not respond to the comments at these meetings. If from the comment it's clear there is follow-up that would be appropriate, staff will follow up after the meeting with the individual from the public. Want to make it clear to any members of the public that if you're having concerns about delays with EDD and problems reaching EDD, we are not EDD. And while we very much sympathize with concerns of delay that people are having, we cannot involve ourselves in a case of individual claimants or employers prior to the case coming to us as an appeal. We are basically the appellate judges on EDD cases if folks, either the employer or the worker, disagrees with a determination by EDD. As a result, as judges, we cannot meet individually with one party or the other, or work to help one party or the other behind the scenes, even though we might like to. So while we look forward to your comment, please understand these are our restrictions. With that, I'd like to invite the first member of the public to introduce yourself and go ahead and make your comment. If you can hear me, we're not hearing you. If you're muted, please unmute yourself. And will the administrator interact with the member of the public, please? I'm still not hearing anything.
I have allowed him to talk and he is not muted.
Okay, we'll wait another 10 or 15 seconds, and if we don't hear anyone, we'll move on to our next agenda item. Okay, in that case, at this point, we will pick up with item number 6, which is report by Michael Kutry, our Chief ALJ and Executive Director.
Good afternoon, Chair Block and board members. I'll begin with a review of CUIAB's workload and timeliness, and then I'll address some other operational issues we've had since the last meeting. Since the last board meeting, EDD released data on the amount of claim denials it has issued since December of 2020 based solely on suspected fraud. The total is over 900,000. Last month, I reported that March saw a record 176% increase in appeals since the last pre-pandemic month, which was March of 2020. Unfortunately, April set another high water mark. Our appeals are now more than 276% higher based on daily transmittals from the EDD than that same pre-pandemic month. We're receiving nearly 60,000 appeals per month from EDD. So now on to our timeliness and how that's impacted. As I reported in the last meeting, we closed our Department of Labor evaluation year on March 31st. So the new evaluation year has now one completed month. And through that month, we closed 19.8% of cases within 30 days and 23.8% of cases within 45 days. Both well short of the Department of Labor requirements, but still several percentage points higher than the national average. We have committed to calendaring our hearings first in, first out, and that has resulted in a remarkably low case age of 54.7 days on average. For context, the national average is double that at 113 days. Judge Remke, Presiding Judge Remke may talk more about the board's timeliness figures, but I will say that they are in excess of the nationwide average. So I thank you for your prompt resolution of those appeals. Looking forward, we continue to implement a number of strategies to best serve our appellants. We were just saying month over month appeal transmittals to continue to grow substantially. We continue to recruit and train new judges and staff on an ongoing basis. Since the start of the pandemic, we have just begun our 7th ALJ training cohort with more planned because of current recruitments. Those new judges, approximately 48 of them, are performing excellent work for our agency at this point. The next group will be ready in a couple of weeks to join in that contribution. In our field offices, judges continue to step up and hear record amounts of cases. The volunteer effort has been tremendous. Even though we increased caseload to the maximum extent possible under the contract, our judges continue to step up and hear above and beyond that number regularly. Our PJs contribute with large amounts of case dispositions. It's literally all hands on deck as the staff struggles to keep up with the huge amount of dispositions, but they are doing that. As more judges join, production continues to increase, and we're going to stay that course. We have been remarkably fortunate that we've had no COVID closure impacts since the last meeting. As you'll recall, those put a serious dent in our production every time that happens, despite our best efforts to mitigate them. So that is great news. Unfortunately, the growing backlogs at EDD have had a negative impact on our security operations. One of our local offices was vandalized, as were neighboring businesses. The messaging was apparently directed to EDD, but our local field office is where it ended up. We've had several incidents since the last meeting of harassing callers. Most are simply trying to reach EDD. We had one incident in our main headquarters where someone was trying to force entry into the building. Again, there was no current pending appeal, but trying to reach EDD. So we remain patient. Our staff is exceptional at providing the information they can, but it's still a struggle because of the volume of people trying to reach our offices. CHP is our partner in this security effort, and they respond very quickly to any of our concerns, and they've worked with us on each of those events that I just reported. So going forward, we are working with EDD and labor agency as well as the administration to try to chart a path towards normalcy and what that would mean for our health and safety operations and our ability to serve the public better. Those discussions are still preliminary, but we hope to have some concrete plans by the next board meeting of how we're going to adapt to meet these challenges and preserve the health, safety, and security of our facilities while doing so. Vice Chair Reeves and Member Ang, or particularly Member Ang, welcomed our newest presiding judge, Jenny Whalen, to the Pasadena office. He gave an exceptional background of Judge Whalen, but I would like to welcome her personally and state that over the last months as the acting presiding judge of that office, she's done a remarkable job. She's highly respected by her peers and for excellent reason. So welcome aboard as we try to meet the challenges of this current pandemic-induced recession and serve Californians the very best we can. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mike. Before we get to board questions, there was a chat comment from a member of the public who said they do indeed wish to make public comment. So after questions for Chief Judge Kutry, we will go back to public comment, and if the person is still on, we'll go ahead and hear their comment. But not yet. First, we have questions for Judge Kutry, beginning with Vice Chair Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mike, for that sober review. So we have a 176% increase in month-to-month appeals. Is that what you said?
So that was in March. Unfortunately, that's gone up. We measure our increase by our last pre-pandemic month, just for simplicity, and we're nearly 3 times that amount coming to our office every month from EDD.
Okay. And you've hired how many people in the recent? Well, we're now into mid-May, so you had roughly four full months. How many ALJs have we hired in that time period?
So as not to misstate the amount, I'll let Chief Silva address the particular number, but we've trained, I believe, in the high 40s, and we continue to train another group now.
In pre-pandemic, we had approximately 100 or so ALJs working for us?
Slightly less, yes.
So roughly a 40% increase in overall workforce in terms of ALJs?
Roughly. Unfortunately, there's also attrition that has occurred during the pandemic. So to maximize the productivity, we're hiring. Unfortunately, we lose some periodically at the same time. And then we've also brought a lot of people back as retired annuitants. So we've tapped every resource we can to try to get cases heard in that regard.
No, I appreciate that. Is there an ongoing effort to continue to hire additional ALJs given the circumstances?
Yes.
Okay.
And perhaps Rob will respond during his report. Rob can tell us about the ongoing hiring efforts and the numbers hired. If that's all right.
And then at the top of the board meeting, the chair referenced the urge to take a vacation. I think it would be fair that ALJs have earned those vacations. Yeah. But I mean, how are you scheduling for vacations given the circumstances of the impending, steady rise, steep rise of cases? And I know that ALJs want to take vacations with their children over the summertime, and I'm one of those people. How do you plan on managing vacations over the coming months?
Yeah, we have yet to see. Excuse me, I'm not sure what happened to the audio. We've yet to see a dramatic increase in vacation requests, although we do anticipate that certainly there will be more vacation requests than there currently have been over the last year. We approve requests based on operational need. I'm not sure where the feedback is coming from there or what changed. Sorry. We approve leave requests based on operational need. And we will continue to do that while weighing the ability of the offices to respond to massive workload by way of team calendar and other things. So we hope to strike that balance between our operational necessities and judges hearing cases and letting people take some time to unwind. They've been working extremely hard for the last 14 months, and we do understand that we need them to take that moment and catch a breath and come back and help us carry on.
Well, for the sake of their health and the quality of the work, I would agree. Did you say that there was 900,000 cases dismissed for fraud? And if that's the case, are most of the cases, what percentage, do you have an idea of what percentage of cases that are coming to the field offices are fraud based? or suspected fraud?
No, we don't. EDD has not supplied that, and I don't know how closely they track it. But we do know that the 900,000 cases that were a result of their December audit have all been issued formal denials. And it is their impression that that is the result of the last 7 weeks of dramatically increased workload. It did take EDD some months to issue all those denials, and then of course it takes them quite a bit of time to process the appeals once received. So we're not sure, and they're not sure where we are along that stream, but certainly it's here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your patience.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on to Member Eng. Mike?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I wanted to commend Executive Director Cucci for making the effort to visit the various CUIAB offices throughout the state. I saw him at the Pasadena office, and I know that he has matriculated throughout the state to give the in-person leadership that they deserve and need. I did have a couple of questions. First of all, you had mentioned, I think it was last month's report, that there's a new policy that CUIAB receives the appeals directly from EDD, and what's the impact and progress in that area, if you haven't already mentioned that?
Yes, so that was the subject of our extensive regulatory changes that we submitted. And since the board approved those, we are moving forward with those, but they're not in effect yet. So we do not have currently the ability to accept a direct appeal from a party, but we are in the process of seeking to change that.
Okay, so we're gearing up for that. I imagine that will be quite an avalanche when we are allowed to receive it. Do you know
correct.
What the backlog is right now with EDD?
No, so what the backlog of claims is, I do not. At EDD, I do not.
Okay. My second question is regarding the monthly litigation report that we received. Have we already received the summaries of the 2 claimant cases closed in April, or is that something that's new?
Since Chief Counsel's office prepares those reports, I would prefer that he speak to that. I just am not sure what's been included to you so far in reflection of April's report.
Mark Woosam, do you want to address that?
There were 2 cases, I believe, closed in, if I'm not mistaken, in the month of April. And I believe they were claimant petitions in Superior Court. I'm not asking for a report on that right now, but I just wanted to know if those cases, the summaries, had been sent to the board members already, or is it something that I can request now?
Yeah, I'm happy to send that following the meeting. And just looking at this, I'm not sure which 2 you're referring to in the.
What's in the monthly litigation report under cases closed? Anyway, I'll let you take a look at that, but I wanted to know if on a regular basis if we could, I know I'm going to be asking it every month, but as a matter of the board, if any other member wants it, or if it's prudent for all the board members to receive, I think it's incumbent on us to receive those decisions because they may not necessarily be binding, but I do believe that they're important for us to know of any particular trends. So and you may, and I apologize in advance if you've already sent it out, but if you haven't, I would like to see those 2 cases summarized, especially knowing the actual substance of the decision. So I have nothing further on my requests.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And Member Eng and Chief Counsel Woosam, if you 2 could communicate after the meeting and just make sure you know what cases we're discussing here and that Member Eng gets the information he's requested, I'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you, Mike. Moving now to Michael Ellen.
Yes, Chief Judge Kutry, is my information correct that at this point, all 50 states are out of compliance with timeliness standards and in terms of complying with what's expected of them?
I can't say all 50. I believe there may be 1 that is in compliance. It would be a small state, a very small state. But I believe that the vast majority are out of compliance.
So I was just wondering, has there been any discussion between, and maybe Chair Block might know this, about the vast majority of states being out of compliance, at least broaching this subject with the Federal Department of Labor, because this is such an unusual circumstance. I just think it would be good to maybe get some clarity as to whether they're going to impose any kind of reviews or sanctions upon all these states that are struggling with this huge caseload. And I just think maybe approaching them as a group as opposed to one by one might be a good way. So that's my concern.
I appreciate that. We can explore an opportunity to do that.
Okay, and Member Allen, I will speak this week with Chair of the National Organization and ask him to make contact with Joel. That's a really good idea. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair Block.
Moving now to Member Ken Monning.
Thank you, Chair Block. I just wanted to state my support for what sounds to be a lot of hard work going on to see if our agency can think out of the box and pivot again, as we did in the face of the pandemic, to tackle the rising workload now that we have been learning more and more about what EDD has been faced with, and we see what case volume we are faced with. I fully support any sort of creative thinking that we can do to tackle those cases. And I believe in particular, the highest percentage is ID related cases. So I just wanted to thank everyone who's working to brainstorm on those measures. And I understand that it is a fine balance of protecting, the safety of our staff and then also trying to do the best we can to serve the public. And I really appreciate the discussions that are being had on that and support the need to think creatively so that we can meet the demand that we are facing. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, board members. Thank you for that report, Chief Judge Kutry. At this point, we'll move back to item number 5, public comment, and I'll ask the administrator if he still has a member of the public who wishes to speak to the board.
Chair Block, I do have the previous user who wanted to make public comment to the board, and I have an additional hand raised for public comment when that person is completed as well. So with your permission, I will give the first person ability to speak.
Yes, please. Go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes.
Yes, this is Richard Miller. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Thank you. I'm a former ALJ2 with the CUIAB. And I worked there for several years. I passed promotion as an ALJ1. I passed promotions as an ALJ2. And I received nothing but favorable responses on every MSA and favorable workplace evaluations by my supervisors at the time. Between 2011 and 2013, as an ALJ2, I conducted somewhere between 3,500 and 3,700 hearings, doing 28 hearings a week. Also, during that time, allegedly, there were approximately 15 board requests for revisions that Judge Kutry thought I did not make. He discovered a box in 2015 that had some files in it. He never told me about it. He never discussed it with me. And it also contained personal files and information, which I've requested he return recently, and that continues to be ignored. I'm very concerned, and I raised an issue with Chair Block and asked him to investigate. He chose Judge Kutry to investigate and said Judge Kutry would be in contact with me. Judge Kutry has never been in contact with me. Judge Kutry has not returned my personal items despite my requests. The council has made indications that I've not been reemployed despite reemployment rights, despite list eligibility, despite nothing but favorable reports other than those made by Judge Kutry when he was not my supervisor. And I asked Judge Block, Chair Block, to look into it. Judge Kutry said, I'll fill you in on Miller's past later. My past has never been revealed to me other than those 15 items that Judge Kutry found 2 years after the fact that he never discussed with me, that he alleged were deliberate and therefore poor work performance, but he's never put anything in my official file. I've never had any work performance evaluation by a supervisor that was negative. only innuendo in the blackball that Judge Kutry continues to hold against me and refuses to allow me to be eligible for reemployment. I have list eligibility as an ALJ2. I've had it since 2017. In 2018, I was contacted and told I was eligible for rehire when they were rehiring 7 to 15 judges. Rob Silva found out after the fact, contacted EDD and had them change and create a special list for permanent intermittent judges and said that I should be on it despite previous comments to the contrary by Elena Gonzalez in 2015. He also coached one of the other applicants at that time. When one of the EDD workers said, even if he's not eligible under permanent and intermittent, which I should have been, he's eligible under Rule 277. Mr. Silva then said the legal department of CUIAB does not want to raise that issue right now. So again, preventing my reemployment and reemployment rights. Judge Allen has made a concerned statement about reemployment being important and efforts being made. However, I singularly have been blocked by Judge Silva, or I'm sorry, by Rob Silva and Judge Kutry, and the only black mark with any of my employment is these 15 files, which he still holds and has offered as evidence to Elena Gonzalez. She didn't want to look. I'm informed that they were offered to Michael Allen, but he didn't want to look. So I've been told. So I'm very, very concerned that Chairman Block, that this investigation, which you said would be full and fair, has not taken place. And I'm very concerned as I continue to be eligible, I continue to seek work, I continue to be unemployed, and I continue to be ignored despite all the claim by Judge or Chair Block that it would be a full, fair investigation and that CUIAB board would follow not only the letter but the spirit of the law, especially that of State Personnel Board, CalHR, and the hiring practices within CUIAB. So I hope there'll be some follow-up. I hope that someone will contact Judge Kutry or that he will listen and return my personal items, which he took custody of and continues to hold on to. I believe there were pictures of my child, the son who was born about the same time as Mike's. We both have 10-year-old firstborns. That's my comment and concern. I've sent emails to all the board members. And
thank you for your comments. That is, your 5 minutes are up. I appreciate your commenting, and we'll move now to the next member of the public who wishes to address the board. Administrator, please introduce that member.
Allowing that person to speak now, Chair Block.
Okay, thank you. Please introduce yourself. You have up to 5 minutes to make comments.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Chair Block. I understand that the EDD is a separate entity. I'm keeping in mind your prior comments. It's mentioned in my prepared comments simply because it's part of the factual matrix that brings me to the appeal department.
Sure.
I'm only here because the EDD has failed. EDD reps often didn't take the time to listen. They were unable to provide consistent guidance, and they were so rushed that they made as many mistakes as they prevented. The system designed to help the unemployed has been a bit of a nightmare, and I know you know that. Again, my name is Kathleen Devlin. I am one of 700 California-based flight attendants that have been separated from American Airlines due to lack of work from COVID. We're relying on everyone in the appeals department to be able to momentarily set aside the pressure and stress of time-lapse goals and case aging. We're relying on you to take the time to listen, to guide, and to help us tell our story. I'm asking you to ensure that the priority is the individual case and not the caseload. My coworkers and I are acutely aware that no department in the entire agency was built to handle this volume. Because we're part of the 6.6 million pandemic-related claims, our entire UI experience has been one with an agency in crisis mode. We are a part of this avalanche of cases rolling through each process, each department, completely clogging up the system as we roll along. In addition to the long waits, we find overworked and stressed out employees that are rushing through their work, skipping steps, making mistakes. We know that these are good people, and they're just trying their best to cope with this massive increase in workload. It's inevitable that this pressure affects their stress level and their work performance. I also know that there's a slew of improvements on the way, and this would be a good time for me to express my appreciation to the board and your entire department for both your modernization plans and the recent hiring efforts to meet the challenge of the increased caseload. I do understand that the entire labor and workforce agency has a Herculean task of coping with today's claimants while at the same time trying to build a more efficient organization. And that challenge is a little bit like going through a major home renovation with a house full of guests the size of a Mongolian horde. I get it. I get the pressure. I get the challenges. But my primary purpose today is to provide the claimant's perspective. We're often referred to as the backlog. There's no doubt that we've been underserved along the way. The biggest disappointment has been the fact-finding interview. 1 or 2 questions is not fact-finding. And rather than listen and look at the information in their own benefits determination guide, they're quick to kick the can down the road. Just appeal it, they say, like it's simple, like it's easy. So now our can is here in the appeal department, and you have a huge backlog of cases to get through. We're hoping that you can, from time to time, forget about the avalanche of cases rolling down on you. And we're relying on you to give us the time that no one else has, to clean up some of the mistakes made by other departments, and to hear us and to help us tell our story. Meeting time-lapse standards is absolutely a worthwhile goal, but if each case is not afforded the time and attention it needs, there's no point in timeliness. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak today. And again, I want to recognize everyone's hard work through this difficult time. If I have a remaining minute or second or two, I have 4 quick lines for your consideration.
1 minute and 3 seconds. Go ahead.
Fantastic. The Benefits Determination Guide, the BDG, is a claimant's primary resource for information and reference at EDD. In appeals, it's all about codes, cases, and precedents. I wonder if we're speaking 2 different languages in the appeal process. Is there a better way to marry these 2 references to help claimants move seamlessly from claim to appeal? Appellants have a very limited time to receive and review EDD's case and return evidence, only 7 calendar days. Please consider allowing early access to their file so that we can prepare and send evidence early. I know you're working on it, but electronic means to submit evidence would be so helpful. Mail may not make your short deadline, and fax is just not a good option. Lastly, other California courts have self-help resources like Small Claim Advisor or Family Law Facilitator. Perhaps the CUIAB would consider a similar resource. A more prepared appellant could cut case time for the ALJs. And that's it. Thank you.
Right on the dot, Ms. Devlin. Thank you so much for your comments. You may want to speak with Chief Judge Kutry after the board meeting to share some of these concerns, but we do appreciate hearing them as a board. So again, thank you. And we move on now back to our reports. So we're going to item number 7, which is a report by Jody Remke, our presiding ALJ for appellate operations. Jody.
Good afternoon, Chair Block and board members. Turning back to the performance indicators, I would note that the board, for the first month of this new year that the DOL is looking at, the board met and exceeded the DOL guidelines in both categories. Cases completed in 45 days or less was at 70.3, and cases closed in 75 days or less was at 89.7. Both, as Chief Kutry stated earlier, are above the national average. I just want to, note that the board has been working hard, carefully reviewing each case and still being aware of the big picture of the need to move these along, as people have been waiting a long time, obviously, for an outcome. So again, I say that somewhat in response to the earlier comments, but just again, noting that it really is a two-part job for the board, who has been doing, I would say, an excellent job under the circumstances of comprehending new law, taking the time on each case, and still striving to meet the timelines, which it has been able to do. So, and of course, I want to thank all of the AO staff for their assistance in that, and the ALJs in particular. I would just note on the overall workload, we did a little bit of a flip here, and our balance of open cases has increased slightly from last month, and the number of cases closed decreased. That is in large part due to staffing issues. All of our three RAs that we've been using were off for various points of time, almost a month in total. And as you know, Becky has been assisting in training. So just overall, we were down. I'm pleased to say, though, all three RAs are back. As you know, we have a new ALJ starting in AO. Hopefully, Becky will have some time between training all the new ALJs to assist. So I think we're in good shape right now. Again, I think we're fortunate that our caseload has not seen the rise like the field has. So right now, I think we're holding steady and looking good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Any questions or comments for Jody from the board? Start with Vice Chair Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just for the benefit of people maybe watching, RAs, you're referring, Jody, to retired annuitants, right? People who've come back
Yes.
for us who were previously ALJs.
Correct.
Jody, I appreciate the fact that we, like every part of our division, is struggling to meet the federal guidelines. But given the enormous workload at the field office, at what point do we consider, again, farming out some of the AO ALJs to assist at the field level?
Mike Kutry and I, Chief Kutry and I have talked about that occasionally. It just has not seemed like a good time, knowing that we're just at that point. As you recall, we finished last year, just last month, not meeting DOL standards. We were only at 46.2 for the year when we tried to be at 50% or greater for those 45 days. So considering our small number of both ALJs and caseload versus the vast field out there, what they have to deal with, it seemed like it was not going to make a significant difference to them, while it would definitely impact our overall success.
And until we meet our own federal guidelines, I think it'd be appropriate that we retain all our staff working on those cases. Is that right?
I do.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Member Eng.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Jody. Our chief purveyor of the discussion page, I think it might be good to remind everyone that that you are copied on all of the discussion page comments. I wanted to commend you and thank you for the rapid response. As you know, sometimes we try to get finished with the case so it doesn't go on past more than a day or so. And I noticed that in the cases in which you were consulted, that there's an immediate and incisive response. I also wanted to comment that it's always a joy to welcome back the, at least once a week, I see a name of a appellate judge that I saw when I started way back in 2019 and then disappeared, of course, and then they came back and I saw there's a new one that's coming back as well. At this point, what is the total number of judges in the appellate department right now?
Well, we have, is it 5? Sorry, I should know this off the top of my head. I know. I believe 5 full-time, 1 part-time, and 3 RAs. Is that right?
So it's about 9? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just did
Well, great.
the
Thank you.
numbers too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good when you announce them, and then we can request, if we have to email them or anything like that, we can request that information from the staff. But anyway, thank you. I have nothing further. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Moving to Member Allen.
Yeah, hi, Jody. Like always, thankful for everything you do for us. So I was just curious, we have a new hire. I believe it's Marilee Chen. I think you mentioned that. Is she your assistant, or what is her, or is she going to be?
No, she's an ALJ. She'll be working on the cases for you.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought maybe you had an assistant, but I guess all the AOs help you and you help them. So, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Michael. Member Kemani.
Thank you, Jody, for your support when we have questions, including just an hour for our monthly board meeting. You helped bring light to a case we were working on. So just want to thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you, Laura. We'll move on now to item number 8 on our agenda, a report by Jeff Willoughby, our Chief Information Officer. Jefferson.
Great. Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Block and members of the board. First, I'd like to send out a quick thanks to the IT staff. They work really diligently to support the influx of new ALJ and support staff throughout the organization, as well as keep all of the systems running in the background so that we can fulfill our organizational mission. Moving on to our modernization project, we continue to make solid progress. Much of our field operations work is complete, and tax hearings, court cases, and appellate operations work are underway now. So we continue to make progress. Very, very encouraged by that. In addition to developing improved systems functions, the project team reviewed and updated many forms that we use to ensure compliance with things like ADA and EEOC, and to maintain their usability as they transfer into electronic versions. This included the development of many templates and forms related to the hearing process, from the initial scheduling to notices of hearing, postponements, and the actual hearing. So we're getting the nuts and the bolts squared away internal to the system. So in support of our modernization effort, the change management team has identified some necessary tools and training as a result of our recent survey. And you should see some additional information on that training coming to your email inboxes soon via our What's the Buzz moniker. So, and I would be remiss, I once again would like to thank and commend the subject matter experts, including Presiding Judge Hugh Harrison, for their dedication to this project. Their efforts have ensured that a high quality product is going to come out of this that will serve the organization's needs for many years to come. And that concludes my comments for this month.
Thank you, Jefferson, and thank you for mentioning Hugh Harrison. Hugh, if you happen to be watching, while we don't mention you much in these meetings, you are very much appreciated. You are, most people realize, part of the backbone of this operation. So thank you, Hugh. And now we'll move on for questions or comments for CIO Willoughby, beginning with Vice Chair Reeves.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions. Just thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Hugh.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Moving on to Member Eng.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Willoughby, again, a shout out to your help staff. Even though I'm entering my 3rd year, it continues to amaze me how many times I can screw up my own IT. And the help staff has always been there, and they get the job done immediately. And so just a shout out there. I also wanted to thank you for the employee results summary of the appeal system modernization. If you haven't read it, it's very informative. I believe it's come out a while back. I think it was September that it came out. But one of the questions referenced, yes, and it's very interesting reading, but one of the questions referenced the assessment of the recorded trainings, and the comments seemed to reflect, and I'm not sure what percentage it was, but reflected a desire for in-person trainings. So how realistic is the in-person training? Did we ever stop that? And if so, when are we going back to in-person trainings? This is on the part of the employees.
I'll defer a little bit because I'm not sure what the reopening of the state is going to look like in its entirety. I can tell you that we are delivering some tools in terms of teleconference to each one of the field offices that may enhance the training experience for folks. In-person training across the organization, though, I think I would have to ask Chief Judge Kutry to chime in.
Yes, Member Engel, we're working with the state on its reopening plan. We don't have a lot of guidance yet. We would love, as much as anyone, to get back to in-person training, and we do have that as an item high on our wish list, but we do not have a date certain when that will be reestablished.
Okay, thank you. I had no further questions.
Thank you, Mike. Moving to Member Allen.
Good afternoon, Jefferson. I've got a question and a comment for you. So my question is, I noticed in the minutes from the last board meeting, you were talking about trying to improve download speeds within the various areas. And I was just wondering, could you give a little bit more detail about that and what we have now and what you're trying to achieve?
Sure. As more of our systems are cloud-based, we will just naturally require some more available bandwidth to the internet. So we're working with our partners at the Department of Technology to make the network that we have a little bit more robust in terms of both speeds with which we can receive from the internet and send information back up to those cloud-based type services. So we're really paving the way for our future set of systems to some extent. Know that pretty much your Office 365 suite and so forth, that's all cloud-based today. We're just trying to, again, make certain that we don't create a roadblock that we could have easily avoided. So we're improving the speeds in both upload and download directions specifically to each one of the field offices in support of more and more of these cloud services over time.
Jeff, so my comment is, and this sounds like a complaint, it's not really, but because you guys do great work, but I will tell you that we tried to do our newsletter meeting last month in Teams, and the Teams application was compared. I mean, Zoom has its own problems at times, but it's fairly reliable and it's not too glitchy. But the Teams meeting we had, it was only 4 or 5 people. It was almost unusable, and so I just wanted to share that with you. I don't know the details of it. I don't know whether it's just inherent in the Teams program or application, but I just wanted to alert you to it because compared to a Zoom meeting, it was like, you know, it was really, I ended up making a request that we do our next newsletter committee in Zoom because it was just really hard to get anything done.
Okay. Thanks for that observation. We'll take a look at it.
Thank you, Michael. Moving on to Member Ken Monning.
Just want to echo the thanks that you've given your staff as well. I had an issue this past week and had multiple people helping me resolve it, which was so nice and appreciated. So thank you to all the hardworking IT staff. I know they do a lot more than the help desk requests, but that is also very much appreciated to continue being able to do our work. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. We move now to item number 9 on our agenda, which is a report by Rob Silva, our Chief of Administrative Services. Rob?
Thank you. Good afternoon, board chair and members. I'll update you on a few things in the admin sphere, beginning with hiring. And just to circle back on Vice Chair Reeves' inquiry, since April 1st of 2020, we have brought in 42 permanent full-time or limited term ALJs, as well as 13 retired annuitant ALJs for a total of 55. We are also in the process of possibly bringing aboard another one from a soon-to-be closed recruitment. And then we also, last Friday, started a new recruitment for more administrative law judges. That went live last week with a final filing date of June 13th. So we intend to hire 10 ALJs on the strength of that recruitment. And with only a few short days into the recruitment, we've already received a number of applicants. So that's looking up for us. We have had 9 support staff recruitment advertisements since the last board meeting. For 5 of those, the final filing date was in early May. There are also 4 positions, all for the Sacramento Office of Appeals, that we advertised just last week. During our most recent public language survey, which was in toward the end of 2020, our Sacramento office showed a need for 1.2 positions as certified in Spanish, and we actually had 1.5 positions certified. That 0.5, that half position, it was a retired annuitant position, and that particular retired annuitant has been working less hours recently. Even with that hourly reduction, the Sacramento Office of Appeals has still been over the identified position need of 1.2 for the Spanish language. However, as a precaution, we still felt compelled to bolster our Spanish language employees for that office. So one of these 4 current recruitments for the Sacramento office is for someone that's fluent in Spanish. Admittedly, that's a real granular look into our current hiring for the purposes of a board meeting, but members have recently expressed interests in updates to our language program. So I wanted to take the opportunity with this particular example to assure the board that we're staying on top of this issue. We are monitoring 2 other field offices for 2 specific language issues to make sure that we continue to be in compliance, and we will address that through future staff hiring if that becomes a necessity. Staying with the language program issue, May is one of the months in the year in which CUIAB engages in our biannual audit of our employees that receive bilingual pay. So again, all month, those employees will complete time ladders to ensure that they're using their bilingual skills at the 10% or above threshold for that pay differential. Last November, we had 43 employees participate in this audit, and there have been no changes in the interim. So those same 43 are participating in this month's audit. I have a quick procurement update. With this onslaught, to borrow the chair's description, of incoming work from EDD over the past couple of months, some of our field offices found themselves undersupplied for that level of workload. Large supply orders are typically obtained via a purchase order process, but the fiscal deadline to submit purchase orders was April 21st. And this is a deadline that happens every fiscal year, and it's due to the lead time needed for processing all of the orders and closing out the fiscal year by June 30th. Now, supplies can also be purchased using the state's Visa CalCard system, but in early May, all of our CalCards, save for one, were deactivated for those same fiscal closeout reasons. So the CalCards have a daily and monthly limit, and with only one in existence for the next month and a half, there was just no way to satisfy the needs of the offices until July with that one card. So we worked with the upper management of EDD's business operations on this issue, and they have now set up an internal group to process emergency pandemic-related orders up until June 14th, which was great for us. With that in place, we were able to order everything we needed for those offices, and we also added a small stockpile to be stored in Sacramento for distribution if needed before there is a 2021-22 budget in place in July. And speaking of budget, when CUIAB was working with the Employment Development Department to put together the appeals workload projection data for the May 2021 revise, our departments agreed on unemployment insurance appeals workload increase for the upcoming fiscal year of roughly 4%, an increase of 4% from the workload projected for state fiscal year 2020-21 in the previous October 2020 revise. During this exercise, the EDD was also identifying additional deferred workloads in their department, and we've discussed this earlier in the board meeting, and they subsequently requested funding to address that issue in the May 2021 revise, which was issued last week. Because of that underlying issue, they agreed to an additional UI workload projection increase of 10% for both of our departments. However, we, CUIAB, have yet to receive that finalized figure for our appeals portion of that UI workload. Last week, EDD's Fiscal Programs Division began working on the fiscal year crosswalk documents, identifying the position and dollar increases associated with what we expect to be UI appeals workload figure of about 338,000 to 340,000 cases for the upcoming 2021-22 fiscal year. Just a couple of hours ago, they touched bases with us stating that they're still working on it, and we expect to set a meeting early next week to go over that data. Once we receive the data, we'll be able to factor all of our branch requests for both personnel and operating expenses against those allocations, and we can construct the 2021-22 budget. And that is my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rob. We'll move to questions or comments, first from Vice Chair Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Rob, for that granular, detailed report. It helps provide a great deal of overview and an understanding as to the workings of the administrative branch of this board. I want to thank you for the discussion of the language capacity, which of course is critically important to providing access to justice for many Californians. And I want to thank both board members, Kent Monning and Ng, who had a long-term sustained focus on this topic. And I'm grateful for that. You raised the issue as regards to the next year's budget and said that initially the May revise projected a 4% increase of workforce for our board. Then it sounded like it changed to 10%. I want to make sure it's not 14% overall. It's gone from 4 to 10. Is that right?
Actually, I may have not stated that clearly. So when we were looking at the 4% increase for the coming fiscal year over the current fiscal year's figures from the October 2020 revise, after that was settled, it was decided to add an additional 10% onto that 4%. So yes, 14 would be closer to reality.
Okay, so we are looking at a 14% increase. And does that give you the flexibility? I mean, I know that you're handcuffed until the budget is signed the middle of next month, but I assume, can you continuously post positions, or do you have to wait for that budget to be sealed before you can?
Yeah, we can't advertise the positions until we're actually given the positions. We are with the current positions that we have, both with ALJs and support staff, we're continuing to advertise to the extent possible within those positions, and we still have some vacancies currently that we're not recruiting for. So we're bringing in people as quickly as we can, still with a little wiggle room, but we will act very quickly once we officially receive the positions to continue to ramp up with staff.
And just one more question. Do you receive those positions the moment that the governor signs the budget, or is there some sort of administrative procedures that the labor agency must take in order to officially provide them?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Well, I'm curious as to, it's in the budget, but is there administrative steps that must be taken by labor in order to actually authorize it?
No, once the governor's budget is signed, we will have the positions and the ability to move forward with them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on now to Member Ng. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Silva, I just had a couple of questions. First of all, are you recruiting, are we recruiting ALJ 1s and ALJ 2s at the same time?
We are only recruiting ALJ 1s currently. There is what we've historically done with regard to ALJ2 is once they are an ALJ1 for a period of 2 years with CUIAB and have the background behind them, we can promote to ALJ2. We do have an effort going right now. Again, historically, we used to use Office of Administrative Hearings, Administrative Law Judge 2 list. And that's since we've had ALJ2s over the last 20 years or so, we've always used that list. Office of Administrative Hearings has ceased doing that exam. So with no list to borrow, we're now we're planning to conduct our own exam. It's in the works. We have subject matter experts preparing the exam, and our goal is to administer an ALJ2 exam this coming summer to see if there are any people that are eligible to take the exam and be converted to ALJ2, with the intention that the following summer we will again have the ALJ2 exam. It will be an annual ongoing exam, and in theory, by that time, we should have many ALJ1s who have started with us, have 2 years of experience under their belt, and be eligible to be transferred to an ALJ2 position.
So in order to qualify for ALJ2s, they have to have 2 years experience as ALJ1. Is that correct?
For CUIAB, that is correct. It's a department-specific classification, so that is correct for CUIAB.
And is it within only our agency that they would qualify?
Yeah, for instance, the Office of Administrative Hearings, Administrative Law Judge class, they only have to be in an ALJ1 position for 1 year prior to being eligible to be advanced to an ALJ2, but the CalHR rule for our department is 2 years.
Okay, well, good luck. I know we've got to fill both categories as soon as possible. My final question is, I believe in the last meeting, you referenced the ELTA language service being used by EDD to provide live bilingual testing, and I believe the comment was, or if I recall it, that the CUIAB was invited to use the service. Has that happened yet? And
yes.
And what do you think about the service?
Well, the invite has happened. We haven't had to utilize the service yet. So we have I'll let the board know as soon as we have an internal person who needs to utilize that service, but so far we haven't had the need in the last month.
Meaning
to
that
test someone.
So so in other words, if I'm an employee within CUIAB and I have say a language skill, and I'm not on the current panel, like for example, if I were a new employee, I would have to be tested. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have a language liaison that's assigned to each field office, and they just simply reach out to them, and our language liaison will set up the connectivity to that exam.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Moving on to Member Allen.
Rob, thank you for your good work. I know that it's not so easy to put together these budgets. I just have one question. I think maybe I read this in one of your previous reports, or I read it somewhere, that with the Biden, the American Rescue Plan, that was the large piece of legislation that was passed last month, is additional money coming to our agency as a product of that legislation?
I don't believe the money that's going to come to our agency is through unemployment insurance workload projections. That's going to be how we're funded. So there's not specific monies earmarked for us due to that federal act.
Given our caseload, we probably will see additional money. So that would make sense, right?
And we definitely will, yes.
Right. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Michael. Moving on to Member Kent-Money.
Thank you, Chief Silva. I appreciate, as Vice Chair Reeves said, I appreciate you getting into the weeds a bit on the scope of your role, because it really helps us understand, all the different puzzle pieces that are going on every day here to continue doing what we do. And I appreciate what you and your staff have done to enable agency to continue working with the high volume of cases. As far as language goes, I just wanted to directly recognize all of those who work for our agency who do have a second language ability. When I review cases every day, there are appeals from claimants translated into English. And if it weren't for those staff at our agency doing that, which is hard, tedious work, sometimes it's really hard to see what people have written, but that role is what enables that party's voice to be heard and their access to justice. So I just wanted to give direct thanks to the people who are doing that every day, and we really appreciate it. And I see you every day in the cases that I review. So just wanted to send my thanks out.
Thank you, Laura. That concludes the reports from our leadership staff. We move on now to item number 10. Item number 10 is information only. No vote will be taken, but it's a discussion of proposed changes to the 2021 board meeting schedule. As I indicated earlier during the chair's report, there seem to be more folks who need, for one reason or another, professional or vacation, to take trips, get out of town at some point during the calendar year 2021. Normally, our meetings are set up for the third Wednesday of each month. In July, the third Wednesday of the month was July 13th. No, I'm sorry, was July 21st. I wondered how the 13th would be the third Wednesday. Third Wednesday is July 21st. However, there was a conflict. At least one member or staff had a conflict with the 21st. So we have decided to move from the 21st of July to July 13th. And as an aside, again, that will be our first in-person meeting following the pandemic. And that, I think you've all been contacted, and that is a date that is good for everyone. What I'd like to do now, though, is see for the remaining 5 months of the year, we have a schedule set, and you received in an email today, I believe, maybe yesterday, from Chief Judge Kutry, a list of those dates for which meetings are set. And of course, you all received those dates back in November or December for the entire calendar year. What I'd like to do, rather than kind of piecemeal it, sometimes the last minute, deal with the need for change, I'd like to see if any board members or leadership staff already know of conflicts where they will not be able to attend a meeting. Now, we have in the past sometimes had meetings with just 4 board members. As long as we have a quorum, that's fine, or with one staff member who is unable to make it, and we can do that. But I'd like to see, of the 5 remaining months, are there any dates that folks know they will have a problem? And of course, there may be things that come up in the future where there's a conflict you don't know you have right now. And that's understandable, and that will be okay. But just to get a little bit ahead of things, we're going to look at the 5 remaining third Wednesdays of the month. We're not going to pick alternate dates right now because that would be too much of a hassle to do in a live board meeting, but we'll have staff call around and come to alternate dates that might work. But are any of those dates for August, September, October, November, or December, are there any of the dates in those months? It's August 18th, September 15th, October 20th, November 17th, and December 15th that any board member knows is not going to work for them. There is one already that I know September 15th will be a conflict for me. So I will ask that we look at an alternate date, perhaps the following Wednesday, which is the 22nd. But board members, don't worry about that date, the 22nd, right now. There will be, Mary Lou's or someone will call around and get your calendars for possible alternate dates. So we know the 13th of July is now on instead of the 21st of July. Instead of the 15th of September, there will be an alternate date, although I'm not sure yet what that date will be, proposing the 22nd. The other dates are August 18th, October 20th, November 17th, and December 15th. Does anybody have a conflict with any of those 4 dates?
Chair Block?
Yes, Michael.
Yes, October 20th, it's a conflict for me. I would only be available from the last week of October.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So also, board members, if you are making notes, circle October 20th, that meeting date might need to be changed or will need to be changed to accommodate member Allen. Again, there is a chance that we may have to do a board meeting with only 4 board members, but there's member Allen and myself, and anybody can be, we can have a meeting without any one member. 17th of November, 15th of December, good for everybody? As of today? Very good. And the 18th of August, good for everybody as of today?
Yes, sir.
Good. So we know those 3 dates are, at least at this point in time, set in stone. Any other comments regarding calendar and scheduling right now before we move on? Seeing none, that concludes item number 10, which was an information-only item. We have no closed session day, is that correct, Chief Counsel Wusam?
That's correct, Chair Block.
Okay, since there is no closed session, we have completed the open session agenda. Unless there's anything else from any board members, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time and your attention. Thank you.